Okay, everybody, I want to welcome you. It is Thursday. It's 7 o'clock Central. It is time for Conversations with Commodores, and I want to thank you guys for switching the dates around with me. I try to continue to do these on Tuesdays, but scheduling just sometimes pushes it to Thursdays. And I know you guys recognize my guest tonight, Stormin' Norman Jordan is with us. How are you doing tonight, Norman? And thank you for making some time to be with us on the show.
I'm doing great, Bernard. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for doing these. I've watched a couple; they're great, and I've got to go through and watch all of them because I just absolutely loved it.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, but I can assure you it is my pleasure each week getting to either rekindle friendships with former teammates who I was in school with, or I get to meet new Commodores from all different decades. We may have played at different times, but we still bleed the black and gold and lots of shared memories. And you're part of some awesome teams in the late 70s, early 80s, and you're also still currently part of our current teams. So for anybody who's been living under a rock these days or the last several years, Norman, tell folks what you do in relation to the football games.
Well, I do the radio. They call it analysis, even though it's not analysis with me. They used to call it color. Now it's analysis, but I don't analyze very much. Just sit and watch the ball game and tell you what happened on something that you can't see that happened. So it works out really well.
Well, I want to stay right there for just a second. I want you to describe yourself. What type of athlete were you when you played for the Commodores in the late 70s, early 80s? And then I have a follow-up question about the current team.
I think I would be kind to say I was an average athlete. If you had to cheat one way or the other, telling the truth, it'd be below average athlete. I mean, I was 5'9", 180 pounds, playing running back in the SEC. So average would be the very best that I could get with. But I did get to play with some really above average people.
Well, I'll kindly give you average for your first couple of seasons. The red shirt, of course, spinal meningitis. How much weight did you lose that year?
I was down to 139 at one point.
Then your first two eligible years, not many production, but then your last 2 years, there's no such thing as average when you lead the SEC in receptions, and then you set what should be, I think, currently an SEC record for receptions in a game. That's way above average. But here's my question to you, Norman. Is there anybody you've seen on the current team or maybe last year's team who you would say has a similar game? Because you may have only been 5'9" and a $185, but it's more than just your analytics right there. It's not just your weight and your height. You had heart, you had intelligence, you had some athletic ability in there that doesn't show the measurables on just being height and weight. Who on the current team, if anybody, kind of reminds you of your game from back then, if there is anybody?
You know, really, these guys are so much better as athletes than I ever was. So, you know, I think, honest to goodness, it'd be putting somebody down to say that they remind me of me. If they remind me of me, if they remind Coach Lee of me, he needs to get rid of them. That's the first thing I could tell him.
Oh, you're being way too humble, but we'll keep going. I want to welcome O.J. Fleming. I want to welcome Kenny Cole. And there's a few others who've just rolled through, and I can't see who they are because they go so fast. But of course, guys, I'm talking with Norman Jordan, who's still affiliated with the program. Norman, what gives you joy about calling those games these days? What is it about still being connected with the college game that keeps you coming back each week?
Well, I mean, it's Vanderbilt. You know, we love Vanderbilt. I love Vanderbilt. I think anybody that would watch one of these calls loves Vanderbilt. And then I just, you know, hope springs eternal, and just keep wanting and hoping. And I think one day we will see a better team on the field. We'll see, you know, the game Saturday, the 62-0 against Georgia. I played in a couple of those, and I mean, all you can do is go back and look at the film and say who kept going, who kept trying, and all that. And really, that's what coaches have got to look for, because you know you got to find guys that are going to keep playing even when you're getting your brains beat out.
Yeah, they one of the things that I appreciate about Coach Lee, and And I did go to the first game of the year, and I've watched each of the games, and I'm coming back for a couple of games coming up in October. But one of the things that I'm looking for is just what you just said. What's the body language on the sidelines? Not just when we have big plays or score or we're leading. What's the body language of the team and the coaches and the staff when we're not doing well, when the scoreboard doesn't reflect Vanderbilt having a good game? I think that's so telling. Just what you see on the field during or off the field during a game reflects what's going on at McGugin and during the week. I don't know if you get to go to any of those practices, but it's just from what I'm hearing is it's a culture change, and Coach Lee just seems to have such an approach that I think we all are trying to get on board and remain very optimistic about. Do you get any of that sensation from your observations?
No, absolutely. I was fortunate. Whit Taylor and Watson Brown and I went and met with Coach Lee. I was hoping to get maybe 15, 30 minutes with him this summer. And I think he spent 2 hours with us, and
Wow.
he just magnanimous and really enjoyed it. And he of all people, he understands it's a different situation than anywhere else in the SEC. And, it's very unique, and he knows it takes a special person and personality to go to school there, to play football there, to lose and still not be a loser and be a winner and just keep going. And, one of the things about a game like Saturday for me is I think some of the real leaders step up when that's going on. You got a lot of people that are very vocal when everything's good and it's time for somebody to talk, but it's the guy that doesn't talk a lot that, it's kind of like I was watching a video recently, and a fight broke out, and I'm looking at it going, watch this little guy, he's not talking, keep an eye on him. And he lit into everybody. So that's the kind of guy you're looking at.
Well, let's put a pause on the current program and what's going on. From when you were there under Coach Pancoast and later Coach Mack, Norman, who were those guys? Who were those quiet leaders or set the examples by doing and not just being the rah-rah guys? Who were those teammates of yours?
Well, one of them's on the call with Kenny Cole. Kenny worked really hard. Unfortunately, hurt his back. I don't remember what year it was, but he hurt his back and couldn't finish playing. But Kenny was one of those guys that just worked and demanded that everybody else work as hard as he did. And really, there were really a lot of people like that, because I think our senior class had 22 or 23 seniors on it, and they've been through a lot. And particularly the 50-year seniors. I mean, we went 2-9, 1-10, 2-9, 4-7, and 8-3. So there's a lot of work, but some of the guys that caused the 8-3, they graduated and they were gone. But they were people that worked really hard, that were examples, that said the right things at the right time. But we had people like that. I'll always remember Phil Roach. Phil, he played up in Cincinnati, one of the best programs in the country. And Phil would come in the huddle every once in a while and say, "Hey guys, it's time to call on yourself." And when he would say that, you knew the game was right there on the line.
They're just some of those teammates, regardless of the sport. And even if they're not a starter or a big contributor, sometimes they just have such a personality and an impact on teammates that they listen and they can believe, and every team has those. Want to welcome one of the beloved Keystone Cops. Billy Smith says to tell you hello.
Hey, Billy.
Billy is usually with us almost every week, and I so thoroughly enjoy communicating with him. And my conversation with him many months ago was one of my favorites that we've had so far. But guys, I'm talking with Norman Jordan, and we're in the late 70s, early 80s. I've been told by many, there was a huge difference in personalities between coaches Pancoast and McIntyre. Every player who played for both has their own experiences. Can you share a little bit about Coach Mack and Coach Pancoast and the differences in them?
Well, first of all, I would say about Coach Pancoast, because it was his last year.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I will say about him is, and I've been around him quite a bit since got through playing, and I have incredible admiration for him, for the way he handled everything, stayed in town, built a very successful business. I don't think I would have stayed in town. I think I would have gone to any other town but Nashville. And there he hung in there, and he's really made a contribution to the community, does a lot of work with the community. And as I said, very successful business. I ran into him, he and his wife at the Y one time, a few years back. Matter of fact, Christy Houck was standing out there talking with him. And so I joined in, and Coach Pankos standing there. And I guess I entered the conversation by saying, Coach Pankos, I just figured out why they fired you at Vanderbilt. And his wife looked at me like, that's real nice, Norman. Great. And he said, why is that, Norman? And I said, who was the last recruit you signed? He said, I don't have any idea. I said, it was me. And I got on campus and they said, we've had enough of this. He's got to go.
Well, I hope that broke a smile, at least on one of the Pankos' face after you delivered that. I want to welcome Mark Matlock. Thank you, Mark, for dropping in.
Mark.
Norman, what was it during your recruitment phase? I've seen in prior interviews where you had a diverse trio of schools that I don't know if I've heard of anybody else mention that Harvard, Vanderbilt, and Florida State being in their three. How did those three schools get onto your radar?
Florida State, they came late to the game, but it was, as I remember, Bobby Bowden's the end of his first year, and they hadn't done that well. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if anything had ever happened at Florida State. I don't know whatever happened to Coach Bowden. Did he win any games when he was down there?
You know, I don't follow their program. I hadn't heard much.
But and I'd always want to go to a good school, and I wanted to play good football. So, you know, Vanderbilt seemed like a good in between where I could get a good education. Both parents were in education. And I knew when I was 5 years old, before I knew the difference between college and cottage cheese, that I was going to cottage cheese or college, one or the other. Mm-hmm. So education was important. And so Vanderbilt fit what I was looking for.
Oh, I hate to throw this to you, but Kenny says, when you and Whit and Frank Manzella showed up, the team was wondering how the coaches had found three guys who were athletes and still that short. Now, yeah. I'm gonna let you take that up with Kenny.
There's a funny story I've only told a couple of people ever. It was Coach Mack's first year, and back to your question on Coach Mack, I loved him. I mean, he was a marvelous human being. As a matter of fact, I went to see him when he was out in the nursing home, and the only thing he could move was his left arm. And I walked through the door, and he couldn't talk, but he mouthed the words, well, word 34 when I walked in, and it kind of took me off guard, and I had to remember, oh yeah, that was my number. And there he was, you know, not that far from not being alive anymore, and he still remembered me. So that was wonderful. And now, what did you question me about?
Well, I didn't question. This comes from Kenny Cole.
Yeah. Productions. Yeah. So this is Coach Mack's first year, and I think Frank had just done a drill, Manzella, and he had run by, and I didn't hear the coach or anything, but I went running by right after him, and he goes, and there goes another one. And all I could ever figure, and I haven't told 5 people that, all I could ever figure he was just talking about a recruiting mistake. So that kind of, I always remembered that, worked a little harder because of it.
I was going to say that may have given you a little fuel, put that in your fire. That's for sure. Well, let's talk about McMinn Central and growing up in Etowah, Tennessee. How far is Etowah, Tennessee from Nashville?
It's a 3-hour drive. It's 60 minutes or 60 miles from Knoxville, 60 miles from Chattanooga. Beautiful country. Anybody that's been down the Hiwassee River, Ocoee River, the mountains right there. That's right where we were. That's where I grew up.
Well, did Suwanee or Chattanooga or Knoxville ever come across your plate about potentially going to school there?
I think I was a fallback at Knoxville. Thought about Chattanooga, did not think about Swanee. I wanted to see, and I've given this advice to several parents and high school kids down through the years. If you can turn 30 years old and not wonder what it would have been like to play, could I have played Division I? Then go play Division III or Division II, where it's not as much of a job. And if you can do that and not ever wonder about it, that's the best thing you can do. But I always wondered. I would have wondered if I hadn't have done it.
Well, I have many friends who fit that bill of what you're talking about. They were good athletes coming out of high school and were borderline whether or not they really wanted to play somewhere, and ended up just not playing at all. And I truly think that the college athletic experience is underrated by many. I really think it sets the tone, and particularly at a school like Vanderbilt, we've heard so many times that your time at Vanderbilt, those 4 or 5 years, really should be setting you up, or at least what Vanderbilt offers should be setting you up for the next 40 or 50 years. It was that way. That was one of the sayings when I was in school. I don't know if it was when you were in school, but I've heard it many times since.
Well, my older daughter graduated from Vanderbilt in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked me on graduation day, she said, Dad, what's the best thing about graduating from Vanderbilt? And I said, well, people are going to assume you're smart until you prove them differently. And she said, well, what's the worst thing about graduating from Vanderbilt? And I was like, well, it kind of caught me off guard. And I said, well, you don't recognize stupid quite as quickly as a lot of people do, because you're around a lot of really smart people.
Yeah. No, that's on and off the field. Some of the ball players, and that can be a detriment or that can be a good thing depending on how it's utilized. But any athlete, I think, who evolves and becomes successful at their respective sport, a lot of it is instinct, athletic instinct. But when you try to overthink a situation, maybe sometimes, just like in life as a whole, you can kind of get yourself into hot water, into some trouble. Now, playing in that offense with Whit Taylor and Allama Matthews and all of those guys, you had to have some smarts on the field because the ball was always in the air. Talk a little bit about those experiences.
Well, Watson came our junior year. Actually, I guess it was the spring before, and put in a whole new offense, and we all loved it and gravitated toward it. And we did an awful lot of repetition on it, and it became very natural. I say it on the air all the time. If you're thinking, you're not playing football. So we had to run it so many times that you recognized it. Your first step, you knew exactly what was going to happen, and you could just do the right thing. And it was really pretty simple. It was go find the open area within this given range of people of turf, and that's what we would do.
When you were going through that first spring training and then that first fall practicing under Watson's new offense, at that point, had things started to click, or did it not really start taking shape until the season began?
For the team or me personally?
Either way, I'd say the offense as a whole.
The offense as a whole, we knew we were going to get people fits. We christened the new stadium with Maryland coming into play and wound up beating them, and they were pretty highly thought of. As a matter of fact, in that game, I remember I didn't know if I was even going to play except special teams. I had no idea where I stood. And talking to Watson years later, he said he and Coach Mack had gotten into not a heated argument, but an argument that he wanted me to start. Watson wanted me to start, and Coach Mack wanted to start Van Heflin, who unfortunately passed away not long ago. Great guy, wonderful human being. And so, of course, the head coach wins that argument. And so what Watson did is Van went out with the starting team, and then he changed his mind about what play he wanted to run. So he had me run in and tell what play to run. So that's just some of that silly stuff that goes on.
Yeah, it's if you're sitting in the stands, I don't think you can appreciate or ever know that the inside game, so to speak, and maybe even many of those standing on the sidelines, particularly the defensive side of our team, may not ever know the communications and all of that. It's the players who are dealing with all of what the coaches' decisions are. Back then, were you bringing plays in and out, or were y'all signaling plays, or a combination?
We signaled solely, just purely solely signaled, but for some reason Watson decided that would be a good time to get in. But
Talk a
the
little.
offense was a lot of fun. Simply, one of the big fans, Bill Elliston, a lot of people remember Bill, spent more time at McGugin than most of us players did, even though he owned his own engineering company. But Bill was telling me after the Florida game, we won 31-29, if I remember correctly, that one of the linebackers came over the sideline and the coach jumped up and said, "Cover your man." And the linebacker said, "Coach, I don't know who my man is." And he said, "Well, cover somebody." You know, people didn't really understand what we were doing. They weren't used to seeing go from, if it's man defense, run a different route than if it's zone.
Yeah, it really is interesting. From so many things have changed in the modern college football game of today. Looks nothing like that it did back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even in the early 2000s. It's so much more of a polished game, with the players being so much more advanced. I dare say that the game that I was playing in college in the late 80s, their high schools are advanced even more so than that now. And I'm sure it's that way in every generation. It just keeps evolving. What was it about playing with Whit Taylor that was so much fun for you?
We were just best friends. I got to know Whit. We went to Boise State together. We were in the same city in Boise State, and got to know each other and really liked each other, and saw each other on a couple of recruiting visits, and then just kind of stayed in touch. But neither one of us knew the other one was going to Vanderbilt. It wasn't like it is today that you picked a place because of who was going there, or because that running back went somewhere else. I'm going to go over here. As a matter of fact, I walked out of my dorm room and there was Whit standing in his dorm room right across the hall. But, we were just always good friends, and we worked out together and we threw together, and it's just it's something that worked. He was a great competitor, is a great competitor.
I was going to say, sometimes it's hard to define how those friendships and those teammate bonds just kind of click on and off the field. And when they do, you can see that. I saw that when Eric Jones was the quarterback a couple of years ahead of me, and he had Boo Mitchell, he had Carl Parker, he had Tony Piercy, and those guys just clicked. They didn't have to say a whole lot. It could be a head nod, it could be a hand signal, whatever it was. They just knew what Eric was going to throw, and Eric knew what routes they were going to run. And it was just beautiful to see how all that worked. And clearly you guys had that as well for a couple of seasons. Guys, I'm talking with Norman Jordan. We're in the late 70s, early 80s, talking about Watson Brown's offense, Whit Taylor throwing the ball around. I guess let's stay off the field for just a minute or two. Norman, you said that Whit was across the hall from you. Where did you guys live as freshmen?
We were in Kassam Quadrangle, which is no more. They tore it and built something else.
I think about the only dorms that are left from back in the 70s and 80s right now is Branscombe, the Quadrangle. That's where I lived as a freshman. I suspect that's the next group after the Carmichael Towers spots have begun their construction, with all of those being taken down. That's got to be the next group of old dorms to go. What about your next years? Did you stay on campus all 4 years, or did you go for 5 years, or did you go off campus?
I was on campus the whole time, in the Towers too, for the next 4 years.
Yeah, as most of us did. And I've talked to many guys about how after Saturday evening basketball games, it's only a 4-minute walk from the Memorial back to the Towers, and about the parties that would go on. I suspect you guys had your version of parties as well, just to blow off some steam and enjoy probably a good Vanderbilt basketball win, which many of them that were over the years. What about, Norman, where are some places on and off campus that you guys like to go just to get away for a little bit?
Well, just about every Thursday during the season, even there was a no drinking policy, so there was no drinking going on, but we would all meet over at a place across the street called the Sub Base. And it seemed like somebody might have been drinking, but there was a no drinking policy, so nobody was. Matter of fact, I was standing down one time. It was my turn to buy, and I'm standing down waiting to fill the pitchers. And Watson comes walking in. He goes, "Norman, who's in here?" I said, "Pretty much a travel squad, coach." And he said, "I got to get out of here," and never went back in the place.
Now, where was that place located?
It was right across the street from Tower 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonesy's, there was a rumor that players got free beer from time to time.
I had heard that as well.
Yeah. I never confirmed that, but
Yeah.
they said it's true.
Yeah, these are a lot of rumors, guys. I can't confirm or deny any of this. I do know that during the mid 80s, late 80s, we had a place called Banditos that was directly across the street. And now I think it may be a floral shop, but it was an old house or an old, I don't know, rundown building, but that's where you'd find most of the travel squad as well.
Well, that's what the funny thing is, David Culley, the current Houston Texans coach, he would check the dorm every Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
And he would ride the elevator up to the 5th floor and say, "Everybody here," and somebody'd say, "We're all here, coach."
That's
right
right.
down to the 4th floor, "Everybody here, we're all here, coach." Down to the 3rd, "Everybody here, we're all here, coach." And then Culley just get in his car and drive home.
And the guys who were answering were probably the ones who made the all academic SEC academic squads. They were probably the ones studying on Thursday nights.
Well, actually, we left one person behind. It'd be the same voice.
Nice.
Oh.
That's great. That's great. All right. I got to ask you about Norwood and Andy Irvin.
That has to come from Kenny Cole.
It does.
The Irvin brothers, they were from Jacksonville, and they were a pair. Andy was in my class. Norwood was a class ahead, and I think it would be kind to say they didn't fit the Vanderbilt mold. They weren't Andy the 4th and Norwood the 5th or anything like that. I don't think they spent a lot of time in class, and they were, even though they were from Jacksonville, they were pretty country.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenny can add anything else from there he wants, but I'm not going any further.
Were they good athletes?
Very good. Both of them very good football players. And I think they left, I think after a freshman year. I think that's when they I don't know whatever happened to them. I guess they went back to Jacksonville.
Coach Jeff Madden says to tell you hello.
Mad Dog.
Dwayne Jones calls you one of the original West Coast running backs.
Thank you, Dwayne.
And Kenny says that the Irvin brothers, they could lift the weight room and they knew how to fight.
They did know how to fight. Okay, that's a story I'll tell real quickly, but I went home for Christmas my freshman year, and I ran in my high school football coach, and he said, "How are the facilities there? How's the weight room?" I said, "Coach, we've got 2 bench presses." He went, "That's awful." And I said, "Well, that's not what's awful. What's awful is you don't have to wait to use one." I mean, it was just, there wasn't a lot of weightlifting that went on.
Yeah, I guess it really wasn't until maybe Doc Crease came through later on that everything got built up. And then after Doc was Brad Bates and et cetera. Norman, what was it about the season while you were in season that really was something that you look forward to? It could have been the Friday morning walkthroughs. It could have been the actual games. I don't know. Everybody has something different that they really, really look forward to each week.
I loved the pregame. I loved getting ready. I loved going out on the field. Had all rituals like a lot of us jocks had. I still to this day, if it's a cool fall morning, I wake up and I'm ready to go. I mean, even though I can barely get out of bed anymore, but I wake up just with the butterflies and ready to go. It was just special time. But that before the game was always real special to me.
Now, were you a rah-rah kind of a guy, or were you quiet and just kept to yourself? Or what was your demeanor in that clubhouse as you're getting ready and getting prepared?
I didn't have much to say. And I kind of saw myself as I'm going to work harder than anybody because I have to. And I tried to let that do my speaking for me. As a matter of fact, I talked to the team. I think it was Derek's first year when he's up here, and I was talking to him, and I said, "Look, I tell you two things that will be true for you. So one is that how hard you work, you'll remember this your whole life. And if you didn't work as hard as you could, you'll regret it your whole life. And the second thing is the guys in this room will be the best friends you ever have in your whole life. And I feel that way about my teammates."
I was going to say it's so very true. It's one of the things that I have come to appreciate from these conversations, and just being a teammate my whole life since 6-year-old T-ball, is you share a common bond, a time and a place, and you have some teammates longer than you have others. But I promise you that I can think of a particular player or a particular play, and I suspect this is with you and others who are watching. If you have a certain memory, it'll take you back to that place and those players, and it'll put a smile on your face, or it'll take you back to a spot that maybe wasn't a great, maybe it was a missed tackle or a missed catch, or it could be the game-winning catch. But it's amazing how those friendships do that to you.
I think Stephen Ambrose, I think it was in Band of Brothers, I think he summed it up best because he talked about as the 101st Airborne that you're not trying to kill the guy over there because he's trying to kill you. You're trying to kill him because he's trying to kill the guy to your left and the guy to your right. Yeah. And that to me is what the teammate thing is about. And, that's one of the things that made certainly the 82 team special was nobody cared who scored the touchdown. Nobody cared who got the stats. Nobody cared who got the credit. We just wanted to go out and play well and execute and win.
Norman, when Watson came in for that 81 season, you found more success in the win column than the previous seasons you had been there. 1 win, then 2 wins, and as you said, 4 wins. And that was Maryland, which opened the new stadium or the dedication of the stadium, then Ole Miss, Memphis, and Chattanooga. And as that season went on, were you noticing a shift in the camaraderie or the not camaraderie, that's a bad term, in the confidence in the team in certain levels?
Yeah, our confidence was way up and it had been way, way down. But we hadn't won enough we could have won more games that year, but we hadn't won enough to really know that we could win. I remember I was talking to John Lastinger, the former Georgia quarterback. I was talking to him one time and he said, Vince Dooley said to the team, he said, in 81, he said, "Guys, I know I say this every year, but Vanderbilt's really good." He said, "And this time I mean it." Mm-hmm. And we were good, and we just didn't know we were good.
But something had to have continued to build when you go into the next spring and then the fall of the 82 season. And you guys had one of the more memorable seasons in the last 50 to 75 years of Vanderbilt history. Take us to that time period a little bit for you personally. Where were you playing? Did you have goals or expectations for the season?
Yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, my dad passed away a couple of years ago, and I was going through some old clippings that he'd held on to, and I was interviewed in the Chattanooga paper, and I told him, I said, "We're going to a bowl game this year." And his interview, he was including that in an interview after the season when we were headed to the Hall of Fame Bowl. So, I really did think we were good enough to go to a bowl game. And, frankly, I think if things had fallen the right way, we were good enough to win the conference.
Mm-hmm. There were so many close losses, but I can, just looking back at the records, it looks like you guys, maybe 1 or 2 games weren't as close, but everything else seemed like that they were winnable games. But there was so much talent on the offense. Whit really had his choice of talented players, and share a little bit about what was it like being in the huddle during the games with Whit?
Oh, Whit was in charge in the huddle. I mean, if the linemen late in the game, if they start getting hot and started griping and moaning and all that, Whit would just step in and say, "Shut up." And it seemed like you'd have to go tell them in the locker room afterwards that they could talk again, because Whit was in charge, and he knew when to take charge, and he did a great job of it. But there was a tremendous amount of respect for each other, to a person, to anybody that was out there on the field. I think everybody respected everybody else, and nobody wanted to let the other people down.
Mhm.
And I know that's kind of a negative way of looking at it, but that's really what we were.
No, that's what you just said. I think is so vitally important for successful teams, whether it's on the field or in the boardroom. Is everybody wants and needs to pull their weight, their responsibilities, because you've got others who are doing the same, and nobody wants to let the others or be the weak link, if you will. But having the command of the team in the huddle, I think, is so vitally important. They clearly, the linemen per se, clearly believed in what Whit was doing, and if they did their job, he could then do his job. So that I'm sure that those dynamics were there from the jump. Who were some of the starting linemen, if you recall, from that '82 team?
Well, you had Pat Sangden, who was a heck of a lineman. You had Rob Monaco. I think Will Wolford came in and started as a freshman, if I remember correctly. I think he's the only lineman I ever remember coming in as a freshman and ready to play. You had Foster on center, and Drawley, transfer from California, was in the right guard. So they were tremendous pass blockers, as good as you'll ever see. Not the best run blockers. No offense, anybody. That's why I wanted to run out without the ball and catch it, and not have to go through, with the ball.
Well, let's talk about during that '82 season. You guys beat two of the three dreaded teams in orange that year, Florida and Tennessee, and that doesn't happen very often for a Vanderbilt season. What made either or both of those games special for you?
I said this after the Tennessee game, and I meant it, but I'm glad he didn't print it. Jimmy Davey asked me, the sports writer at the time, asked me if I was surprised with one. And I said, Jimmy, we're a 3-touchdown better team than them if it had been dry. And I really felt that way. We were a better team. The Florida game was probably the best game I've ever seen, even if I played in it. It was just a marvelous football game. They were running out on the field trying to kick a field goal with an All-American kicker as the clock ran out. It was 31-29, and they would have won if he could have gotten the kickoff. So it was really a great game.
I was looking at only the North Carolina game was really the only blowout that year, and they were 11th ranked at the time. I think it was 34-10. But all the other losses were so very close that you guys, it seemed like in the second half, probably had a chance to pull it close or to win it. But I know you must have had friends on the Tennessee team from guys that either you played against in high school or maybe you played with them in high school. What were those dynamics like playing against Tennessee for you?
There were several there. The one that's a couple very memorable playing against was Mike Kofor, who was an unbelievable linebacker. He was like 6'5", 250, and could run like a deer. Mm-hmm. And the other one, I don't even need to describe who he is, was Reggie White. And Reggie was just a gentleman of the first order. I enjoyed every minute I ever spent around him. As a matter of fact, I remember the day he died. I remember it coming across the TV, and I started crying because he was just such a wonderful person.
Well, I was just getting ready. You beat me to the punch. Did you ever have to chip block or help block on Reggie coming out of your running back position?
I got one worse than that. I had to seal off Bruce Smith his freshman year. That was the weirdest game of the whole year. They were the number one defense in the country, and they came in and we beat them 45-0. Beat them like a drum. But I had to seal Bruce Smith. So I thought, this guy's huge, So I'm just going to hit him with all I got right in the ribs and hope I don't break any ribs. And I hit him with everything I had. I'm a senior. He's a freshman. And I bounced off of him. He still to this day doesn't know I hit him. And I honest to goodness, I almost apologized to him. It's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, but he didn't know I'd hit him, so it didn't matter.
Well, Norman, I may have to go to the campus archives and look for that game film. Maybe we can share that with you.
Allama Matthews had 4 touchdown catches that game.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the great games that you'll ever see.
Well, every game, I mean, because I really think you guys were the precursor to the West Coast offense. Whatever Watson's playbook unfolded for you guys that year, it just seems I would have been, as a former quarterback, I'd have been licking my chops wanting to play in that offense. And I can only imagine, and this is where it's leading me to your 20 catch game. How in the world, because going into that game, I suspect you didn't think you were going to end up with 20 catches, but take us into that world for a few minutes.
See, I didn't think I was going to play.
Mm-hmm.
What had happened is I pulled a hamstring. I was actually running during Christmas break and pulled a hamstring, and we got down there and I didn't get to practice the whole week.
Mm-hmm.
Doc would take me over and stretch me and finally when game day came, I was able to go. I didn't even know that I was going to play. As a matter of fact, I remember I was telling somebody this story I'd completely forgotten about. I think I was telling my brother, we're putting our jerseys on to go out to play, and all of a sudden I realized I've got the biggest jersey in the world. I mean, the sleeves, which are supposed to come down to about your elbow, came down to my wrist, and it was huge. It was bigger than a lineman's jersey, and had the bowl thing on it, and it wasn't like I could say, "Hey, I need another jersey." You got another number 34 in there with a Hall of Fame patch on it that you can break out for me. And so I had to tape it all up and make it where it wasn't quite so baggy and everything. But no, I didn't expect to catch 20 passes. As a matter of fact, after the game, I remember thinking I probably had 8 or 10 catches. I had no idea that it was 20.
Well, you were so dialed into that game, and like anybody who has a real memorable game, you don't keep up with your stats. You keep up with what's going on in the game. So I'm not surprised that you didn't appreciate or didn't realize at the time. Did it hit you, or when did it hit you that you may have set a record, or actually did at the time set an SEC record?
It wasn't while I was in Birmingham. I don't know. I mean, I found out about it when I was down there, but after the game, the thing that hit me was it's over. This is it. I'm through.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to ask you. That's not many people get to go out on their last organized game or sport with such a personal best game. But I suspect, I don't know if y'all flew or drove down to Birmingham from Nashville, but on that ride back or the weeks afterward, did it hit you? I think my career as an athlete, at least from organized sports, has come to a conclusion.
No, I was sitting in the locker room after the game and just went, wow, that's it. That's my last football game. And it hadn't crossed my mind. As a matter of fact, I didn't think I was going to play that game. So I thought I already played my last game, and I hadn't given it any thought at all. And then just going, I started playing Little League football when I was 6 years old, and that's it. And, I was fortunate. I hung around for another year as a grad assistant and got to see if I wanted to go coach or not. And Watson gave me some good advice there. He said, well, if you can live without it, live without it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so many of these coaches, if you look at their resumes, it shows they're on the move, different parts of the country every year or two. It's the rare coach who stays in one spot for years, and maybe by that time they have a family. It's almost like being in the military with so many moves. But Norman, after that year of being a graduate assistant, I suspect you already had your plan in place. And for folks who don't know what you've been doing professionally, kind of catch them up a little bit, if you will.
Well, I went to, after a grad assistant, I went to work for Nike for a couple of years and was traveling all the time and didn't like it. So In 1985, I just walked in off the street with a local firm here. It was a regional firm at the time called J.C. Bradford. Interviewed, got the job, worked there for 13 years, then worked for Smith Barney / Morgan Stanley for 15, 16 years, and just been doing investments for individuals for, since 1985. About 25 of those years were management, where, you're just making sure everybody's doing the right thing with their clients and trying to keep everybody happy. Coaching is really what it is.
Yeah. And on the weekends, your side gig is doing, I don't know if it's color commentary or analyst work, whatever it may be, but you do such a beautiful job of it. And it's, I for one appreciate listening to you each of those games. So thank you for continuing to do that work.
Well, you're awfully kind.
Well, it clearly is a labor of love for you because it comes so effortlessly. But as we get close toward the end of our conversation, I want to ask you, you may not be around the program every day. You're maybe around the program maybe once or twice a day. And it's very easy for people who've been affiliated with the program for many, many years to just feel, well, here we go again. We got another coach saying all these great things. I, for one, don't feel that way. I, for one, believe in what Chancellor Dearmeyer, Athletics Director Candace Lee, and Coach Clark Lee of changing the culture inside and out. And for the first time, the administration is what I'll call it, Kirkland, has pledged such a large sum of money to go with the other sums to change facilities. But that's not all that it's going to take for the scoreboard to change. So I guess what I would ask of you, Norman, is just from your observation, what is it that you like that you see right now out of Coach Lee and what's going on over there?
Well, he understands what he's into. And one of the things he said this summer, and I see it in the players, they try to identify guys that feel like they don't fit in. And they try to help them fit in, try to make them, anybody that played there, or just about everybody, you feel a little bit like an outcast. You're going to class with everybody, but then you're going over and spending, 4 or 5 hours over at McGugan and hope to get back and study a little bit after dinner. But he understands that. And they're trying to make sure that if a kid doesn't fit in, what can we do to make him fit in? And it takes a special person to go through Vanderbilt as a football player, basketball or baseball or any of that. So, I think it's great that Clark's looking at him that way and saying, what can we do to make this person, make their experience here great?
It really is, to me, the Vanderbilt football, basketball, baseball, whatever sport it may be, the school itself, to me, sells itself. The best conference, one of the best cities, and certainly one of the best educations in this part of the country. If not, I think they're in the top 15 in the country for, if you look at those ratings for universities. How can you not put all of that together and then come in as an athlete and get the most out of your experience?
Well, I mean, Nashville is such a great city now. A lot of people argue it's not as good as it was, and I wouldn't take the other side of that argument. But it's a great city. It used to be a well-kept secret. It's not a well-kept secret anymore. The conference is the best conference in the country. And, it's a great school. You can go and get a super education. And I was talking with Mike McIntyre, Coach Mack's son, back in the summer. And he said, that whoever came up with that slogan, SEC, it's just different. He said, they were right on. He said, it is different. It's different from anywhere else. It's more important, and it's a big deal. And I believe that.
Well, what was downtown like during your years?
It was nothing but peep shows and strip joints and a movie theater. I mean, it was awful. I mean, it was sleazy as it got.
You didn't really, other than maybe Printer's Alley, maybe one or two hotels, you did not go downtown back in the day.
No, the only thing I can remember that you go downtown for, and I'm not proud of this, but we'd go down to Night Court and sit and watch them drag people in and just watch the shenanigans that went on. It was a lot of fun.
Now, Kenny Cole wants to know, did you ever take your guitar down to Night Court, or did you strictly sit in the stairwell at Carmichael to learn how to play?
I don't think I ever learned how to play. You got to have a certain amount of talent, and it just was not in me. And that guitar is sitting in the attic where it belongs right now, and I'll keep it there forever.
Oh, that's awesome. Norman, thank you so much for going down memory lane with us tonight for a little bit. I sure appreciate your time and you sharing some of your stories.
Thank you, Bernard, and thank you for doing these. They're wonderful.
Oh, they're so much fun for me. And the folks, so many folks rolled in here. Norman, it was too quick for me to name them all. But guys, as we try to do hopefully every Tuesday, I'll continue doing this. But each week, it's conversations with Commodores. And whether you see Norman in real life or hear him on the radio on Saturdays, he's got a good call coming up. We got a good chance of beating UConn this weekend. And hopefully we'll hear some of Norman calling that game. But thank you again, Norman, and I wish you well.
Yeah, miss you guys.
You guys take care, anchor down, and continue to do what's best for you and your family. And we hope to see you on campus at some of these upcoming home games. Y'all take care.